Hi everyone. Today I have a Robur safety deposit box lock. It's a mouthful. Freshly picked and gutted here, and I was just gonna go through real quickly what's in this lock, so when I'm picking it, all of this makes sense. So here's the key. First off, for my particular one, you can see it's got the regular bitting right here, and then it's got bitting right here for sidebar. This lock comes in two versions. It comes in a gin and a barrel version for the drivers, but the sidebar is the same. People refer to this sometimes as a baby Assa Twin 6000 because it's basically the same internals as that lock, but there's just less of them because it's a smaller lock. It's in this cam lock format right here, and so it's only got 4 side pins, and it's only got 5 pin stacks instead of 6, 4 side pins instead of 5, which is what you would see in a 6K. But other than that, in my opinion, it picks very similarly to how a 6K does. So again, 2 versions, gin and barrels. This is a gin version, so you can see I've got just 2 gins in here. I'll show you the plug in a second. There is milling for up to 4 gins. I don't know if this can have all 5 gins in it. Right there's, you can see the gin spool. I don't know if it can have 5 gins. The number is determined by the bitting of the lock. So low lifts get the security pins, as far as I understand it, and high lifts don't. You can see on 1, 3, and 5 here, these pins don't even stay oriented correctly because they are so small. Here's the thinnest one. So you can see that right there. That's almost a master wafer. It's so tiny. So I got a couple really low lift pins in this particular lock, which is why I only ended up with 2 of the gin spools. But here's the plug. You can see the milling here on every chamber but 3. We've got gin milling. And again, that interacts with the gins because they get caught right here in the milling, and they do not want to come out. The milling, I think, is not as deep as it is on a 6000 or even like an Assa 700, where you really get those gin spools stuck in the milling and have to do a lot of counter rotation to get them out. These pick maybe a little bit like a regular spool, more difficult than a regular spool for sure, but probably not on order of what I've seen in other locks with gins. Here's the housing. You can see the slot where the sidebar goes, but other than that, nothing super interesting there. I showed the plug. Show the side pins again, just in case you're not familiar with these side pins. So you can see each side pin has a series of false gates and then 1 true gate in the middle. All the side pins are identical. The bitting on the sidebar is determined by the actual bar itself, which is unique for the lock or for the key. So as opposed to some other locks where you might have multiple different side pins and that determines the bitting, this is what determines it. So the bar matches the key. You can see those ridges there. The true gates on the side pins have to be aligned with those ridges in order for the sidebar to fall in. So this one is a max lift, a minimum lift, a mid lift, and another max lift. There are 5 positions, so there's kind of 1 in between the mid and max and between the mid and the minimum that it could also be. But this one is max, min, mid, max. So just had to make sure I got those into the right spots there. That's basically it. Nothing super weird about this lock, but definitely difficult to pick. There's a deviation in the difficulty scale between how many gins or barrels it has in it. I don't know if having more gins would have made this lock harder for me. The sidebar and picking the side pins correctly was the most difficult part, in my opinion, not the gins. So, but it is what it is as far as a difficulty rating scale. So there you go. That's everything. Next segment, it's up in the vise and it gets picked. You'll see me go through 3 segments, picking the stacks to get the gins into the milling and everything else set, picking the sidebar, and then picking the gins out of the milling. So let's get it up and get started. All right, got my Robur safety deposit box lock here. So that's as far as the key goes, and it only goes one direction because of the rotational limiting cam. So I gotta pick this clockwise. First thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna pick the top stacks and set gins into milling. Most of these lifts that are not the gins are very tiny. So just a little bit of lift there. And then I can work on the sidebar. Okay. Pin 2 binds first and it's a low lift. So as soon as I click it, I know that the sidebar is gonna bind and I can start working on all the pins here. Okay, I don't want to get all these into false gates because they're a pain to pick out. So I'm going to try to get 3 lifted correctly. And then 4. I think I need a little extra height back here on 4. 4 and 1 on these side pins are max lifts, and that is really, really high. And I have trouble getting a flag that is long enough to both hit that max lift, but also be maneuverable inside the lock. Just double check, make sure. 1's in a false gate, I know that, but let me see if 4 feels set here. 4 feels high enough that it could be in the true gate. 1 is definitely not. So I'm gonna have to counter rotate just a little bit and try to tap 1 up out of its gate here. I apologize if this is shaking the camera. Come on, pin 1. So this is why they say sometimes on these 6K style side pins, they call it the false set of doom, which is basically you get into a false gate and it is really hard to get the lock out, or to get the pin out of that false gate without dropping everything. I don't want to counter rotate this too far, but I do need this pin. Oh, there we go. Just needed that pin to let go. Okay, so now in my false set, I've gone to the second mark here that I've made on my lock. That means that the gins are binding, and I just need to pick these gins out. Again, a little bit of bouncing here. So apologize if that shakes the camera. I think there's gins on 2 and 4 here. So I just need to get these 2 gins. That was the one on 4. And I just need to get this one that's here on 2, and I should be open. These gins do give a little bit of counter rotation when you push up on them. They don't bite as hard into the milling as like an Assa 700 gin would. But I'm just being mindful that I don't drop anything, which would be really sad at this point. Come on. I think you're the last pin here. Let's just get this done. Again, apologies if I'm shaking the camera a little bit. The camera is attached to the desk. There we go. All right. Not too terrible. All right, keep this thing in frame while I get it here. Okay, so there you can see, we do have an open here. I'm gonna lock this back up before so there you go. Locked back up. Take the cam off here. Keys in, my follower. Nice thing is that the key does hold the sidebar in place. Or sorry, not the sidebar, the finger pins. But I will take the sidebar out first. Bring it up here. I'll show this in more detail in a second. But there's my sidebar bitting. So you can see the max lifts front and back. Put you right there. Grab these springs before I lose them. These tiny, tiny sidebar springs. Don't stick to the end of my tweezers. There we go. Okay. I'm going to dump the key pins out here. One. Actually, maybe I can get. Oh, I don't want to pull that out though. I was going to say I can get them with my tweezers, but I don't want to pull the key out because then my my side pins are going to shoot everywhere. So let's see if I can just tap these out. Three is a long key pin. 4 and 5. Okay, I'm gonna do the side pins. Side pins are all the same here. If I pull this out slowly, I should be able to just grab them out. 4. 3. 2. And 1. Put my key down. Here come the springs. All right, there's my plug. Actually, I'll show the milling of the plug right up there. So you can see the milling is in 4 chambers. It's only had 2 gins in it, but it is milled to have up to 4 gins. All right, and here we go with the top pins. You're gonna see how small some of these are. So first one's gonna be a standard. Not super tiny, but on the tiny side. That's 1. Okay, here comes a gin. So you can see the orientation of the gin right there. Correctly oriented in the lock. This one's going to be like a master wafer. Hold on. Look how small that thing is right there. That is basically nothing. Okay, here comes one more gin. See the orientation of the gin there. And then the last pin is another tiny standard. All right, dump the springs, tiny springs. And I'll bring all the internals up close. Oh. Those springs are stuck together now. There we go. Okay, fully gutted. Bring that up to the camera here. So you can see there's the 2 gins. My sidebar, side pins with the false gates intact. And again, I'll just show the sidebar itself in more detail here. So you can see the sidebar right there. In good shape. All right, there we go. Gutted. Gin Robur safety deposit box lock. 2 gins picked and gutted.